We are live again. It is match week 3 in Inter Miami's third season. Maybe this could be the angel numbers that they need in order to get 3 points. 3-3-3. We're hoping so anyway. Look, we've got a tough match today at 1:30 against LAFC. It is at home, and we're coming off a pretty horrid loss against Austin FC. That was 5-1 last weekend in Austin. Now, there's a lot that needs to be improved on if they're trying to get a result against LAFC. We're going to dive into all of that today, but hopefully everyone can make it out there to Drive Pink Stadium at 1:30. This is probably one of the earliest kickoffs in Drive Pink Stadium's history, I would say, especially for Inter Miami. I don't know if there was any other one that started this early. But I'm
Double
I'm
check.
pretty excited about it. I think it'll be fun. I got my morning coffee ready, and we'll be up doing coverage all morning and all throughout the game and all night. So, yeah, let's just dive right into it. Alex, thanks for coming on again. Can't wait to
No
do this
problem.
with you.
No problem.
Um, I guess the first question is going to remain the same. What did you see in Austin, and what did you want or don't want to translate over into this LAFC match? I can't imagine there's a ton that you want to carry over. But what does Miami need to really get rid of and try and improve on if they're to actually get a result against LAFC? And this is before we go into the lineups, of course.
Yeah, they need to play a bit with a bit more cohesion. Last game they really didn't have a strategy. They were just aimlessly long balling balls over the top, and it wasn't hitting anyone. And it probably had to do with Austin's high press and Miami's inability to play out of the back. So this game, they're at home. They would want to dictate the tempo a little bit more. So I fully expect them to try to do that. Can they do that? It remains to be seen, but for sure, looking at that Austin match, it was just, no one played well, and the strategy was all wrong. So this afternoon, they should be looking to fix that by keeping hold of the ball a bit more.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I'm not one to completely doubt the playing style of sitting back, letting the team on the ball, and going for counters. However, there's a big issue with that, right? And as you know, I'm a numbers guy, and I think everyone who's followed me with 5 reasons, I've been a numbers guy, and you're the more tactical side. I'm the statistical side. Um, you know, it's okay to give up possession, but we've talked about it in other mediums before. If you are to give up possession, when you retain possession, you get your possession back in the small chances that you have, whether it's in the first 45 or second 45, and you're only, you're conceding 67 to 70% possession. When you have the ball, you have to make it matter. And when most of your completed passes this season are coming in your own half while you're sitting back and looking to counter, that means that you're not doing the right things with the ball at the right times. And you're not going to be successful playing in your own half while the other team is dictating the tempo of the match in your own half as well. You got to be able to press the ball forward. And I think a big thing that has to do with this is working on the transitional offense. I think Mo Adams talked about it a little bit in the press conference. We have had discussions about the midfield three and how they need to really be the connectors and trying to find a creator up front. Maybe Phil Neville goes with another attacker like he did in the second half against Austin, in which they got the ball forward and retained it more in the second half up there. But just know very closely, I'm going to be paying attention to the passing numbers in this game, where they're completing passes, where their possession is based for the most part, because I think that's extremely important, not only for this match, but going forward. But let's go into LAFC for a little bit, because I think Carlos Vela is going to be playing. I'm not totally sure. I haven't seen any other updates from his substitution in the last match. It seems like he's ready to go. I'm not sure though. I if he isn't, all the best to him. But if he is, he's definitely a creator of massive problems for Miami. What are you expecting from LAFC in this match? Are they going to try and come into Drive Pink knowing what Miami has done the last 2 games and control the tempo, at least in the first 45 minutes? Because let's be honest, the first 45 minutes against Chicago was able to do it, and that was at Drive Pink Stadium. I know if you watched the Austin game, it seemed like for all 90 minutes, Austin FC controlled the game, and they had like about 70% possession in the first 45. How important are the first 45 minutes for LAFC, not just for Inter Miami, but for LAFC to try and, get on the front foot here?
It's very important, especially later this afternoon. It's going to be pretty hot, mostly sunny. The radar looks clear, so there's no rain. Hopefully, I didn't jinx that. As far as Vela goes, I did read a couple of updates. Steve Cherundolo said Carlos Vela trained and will be with us in Miami. Will he play? I don't know. I know he's coming off of a knee injury, and they don't want to risk him, so they could very well start him off the bench. And if they're in a bit of trouble, what a privilege would that be to be able to bring off Carlos Vela off the bench? That would be crazy for them. But yeah, Vela is with them in Miami. And yeah, I think LA, they, knowing what Miami can and can't do, they'll be looking to take the game to the Herons. I know, I know we talked about Miami wanting to keep the ball a bit more and having more touches in the opposition attacking third, but these first two games, except for that second half in Chicago, we haven't seen that much. So I know Sharondolo is gonna take advantage of that and try to get on the front foot pretty early. I know this is a game that's very winnable for LAFC. Miami's the one who's trying to dig themselves out of this hole a little bit. So, for sure, they're going to try to put Miami on the back foot, especially after that Austin result. So, I think it's going to be a really high tempo game. I think both teams are going to go at each other, but I think LA is definitely looking to strike first in this one.
Yeah, I would agree. I know that their attacking prowess is there, even if Carlos Vela isn't there. But if he does come off the bench, that could be a scary sight for tired legs for Miami, who did concede 3 goals in the second half to Austin. Yeah, another thing I want to talk about too is the midfield, the battle in midfield that we're going to see. Kellen Acosta, Jose Cifuentes, for LAFC, and then you look on the other side with Gregory, Jean Mota, possibly Mo Adams again. How do you see that matchup going down? What do Gregory, Jean Mota, and possibly Mo Adams? I guess we'll get into what we think the starting lineups are here going to be soon. But what do they need to do to have a better match to help control for Miami, to help get them the ball in outlets of space that are positive? And how tough is the opposition? Do you think?
They're gonna have to show for the ball a bit more. I know I touched on this in I believe in my 5 reasons article about how you know there's just not enough players in midfield that the how do I explain this? Yes, they're capable guys like Jean Mata, Mo Adams, Gregory, but no one was really showing for the ball in Austin. So a lot of the times you'd get McVay dribbling and he'd have no one to pass it to because the fullbacks either were a bit too high up and being covered by Austin defenders or, just out of passing range. So normally a midfielder would drop and try to just play through the middle. But in Miami, they didn't do that against Austin. And if I checked the numbers in Chicago, they rarely did that against Chicago. They mainly went through the wings. But yeah, I think it's just controlling that midfield 3 for LAFC. They're dangerous and they're kind of the engine that makes the front three tick and they play a high energy style of football and it's going to be difficult for Miami because once a central midfielder for Miami gets pulled out of place, then LAFC, how good they are at exploiting that. So they're gonna have to be very disciplined in midfield later today. Um, you're gonna have to be aware of their surroundings. I know LAC do like to high press as well, and that doesn't bode well for Miami because they've never been a team that's able to play through that high press. So mainly, it's just finding those pockets of space for the Herons and exploiting that. Mo Adams is really good at doing that, but it all depends on the strategy and the tactics that Neville chooses. They could go long again, try to look for that route one football sort of style, or they can try to play through that and have a bit more of discipline compared to what was happening in Austin.
So let's get into the, I guess our injury report. Phil Neville touched on it in a press conference yesterday, which is Friday. And basically, the two big names that we're kind of looking out for here are Kieran Gibbs and Damian Lowe. If you heard the post-game press conference from Austin, Phil Neville said that Damian Lowe was out possibly another 10 days. And then on Friday, not necessarily took that back, but he did say that there's a possibility for him to have a go. And then at the same time with Kieran Gibbs, at least I noticed on Tuesday during training that it looked like he was running first team training drills and wasn't off to the side with a trainer. And that's a positive sign as always. I don't, this was the same day that Maynard Figueroa was training as well, who's ultimately not going to be signed to the team. But if Damian Lowe is ready to go, what kind of an impact do you think he'll have on this game? What's the difference like for him? And then as for Kieran Gibbs, I guess another note on the Kieran Gibbs thing when his injury is that Noah Allen signed for the first team yesterday. Phil Neville announced it in a press conference. I may or may not have forced him into doing so, unfortunately, but I wanted to get an answer. I wanted to know if they were possibly going to give him a contract, and they said they did. So that was awesome to see. Good for Noah Allen. But, now you have a couple of worthy left wing backs on this roster, Kieran Gibbs, Breck Shea, now Noah Allen. And then, later on, Jovan Jones should be healthy. But if Kieran Gibbs is healthy, it seems like he is always going to be the number one man. And if Damian Lowe and Kieran Gibbs are both to have a go, what kind of an impact do you think that is? And then what does it do for the shift in the back line? Does he stay with a three at the back? Does he try to use Damian Lowe with a four because it had, I guess, some success in Austin, not necessarily defensively, but there's a lot of questions to be asked here, and Phil Neville's got a lot to figure out. But I'm going to put you to the task, Alex, and say you need to figure out what is Phil Neville going to do.
I think that they'll stick with the back three, especially if Damian Lowe is fit. Neville said they've worked on that formation. Players have said that's the formation they're most comfortable in. So I don't really see them changing. Of course, I could be wrong. They could come out in a 4-4-2, but numbers wise, a 4-4-2, the two men in the midfield versus a LAFC 4-3-3, three men in the midfield, the numbers won't be on Miami's side. So, naturally playing a 3-5-2 with three men in the midfield to counteract LAFC's three men in the midfield would make the most sense. Who starts? If Kieran Gibbs is fit, maybe he goes. But like you said, Noah Allen did sign a first team contract yesterday. We were very happy about that. So he could get the start as well. That could see the end of Breck Shea at center back if Lowe is fit as well. So he had a bit of a rough go, but if McVay, Quinteros, Lowe, if they're all fit and healthy, I do think they start. In formation wise, they could switch to flat back four, but I think they'll start on a three back this time.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the three at the back is probably, especially with Damian Lowe, and then also what you saw in the four back formation, if not Damian Lowe is ready to go. It didn't really look good with Quinteros and McVay, but I know there's a lot of opinions about this. Steve here saying that a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1 is the way to move forward. The only problem with that for me is Gonzalo Higuain. And I'm not saying that he's a problem for this team because he is the best chance creator by some margin. But if you play a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2, and like you said, Alex, the numbers overload for any opposing team is huge because technically, if he's playing as the 10 and Mota and Gregory are behind him, and you have Campana or whoever in front of him, he has to act defensively as that third midfielder to try and, counteract the advantage that LAFC or any other team that's playing with a three-man midfield would have in the middle. And I don't think that you can rely on Gonzalo Higuain to have those defensive duties. He should not have those responsibilities. We probably won't take those responsibilities onto the pitch. And that's just kind of what, Phil Neville may be dealing with here. Not to say that I don't believe that Gonzalo Higuain should be a starter because he's literally the only. Right? It's just
Yeah,
it's just the way it is. Just the
yeah.
way it is. But that there's more questions to be asked throughout the season. We'll see how things develop here with the formation and the style that Phil Neville plays. But for the most part, I'm in agreement with you that we're going to see the same 3-5-2. LAFC is going to control the ball for a little while, and hopefully that means Miami has worked on things in which they can progress forward. Because if they're not able to do so, we could be in for another rough evening. This time, instead of in Austin, it'll be in Fort Lauderdale, which would really not be great. So we don't really know about Damian Lowe and Kieran Gibbs, so I'm just going to, run in and say that for right now, as we go into our lineup predictions, that we're going to call Noah Allen the starter, and we're going to call, I know it sounds crazy, Breck Shea the starter at center back, but maybe Ame Mabika. But we're gonna work around those two injuries and not give really any mention to them. So the one left back position and one center back position we won't name. But as for everybody else, I think we're probably both in agreement. Diop's in goal. That's just kind of how we're seeing things until Nick Marsman comes back. Then the back line. probably you're also in agreement with me here. I think Quinteros and McVay start if Lowe's not ready. I would love to see Mabika in the middle of a back three.
Mhm.
I think that that would be perfect. I'm not sure why he didn't get game time. And if you want to go see my rant on that, I think I spent about 30 minutes on it. Go back onto the YouTube channel, find the post match Austin recap. And then on the right side, obviously, of course, DeAndre Yedlin, who could be making his way to U.S. men's national team camp in a couple of days. I think they'll announce it around the 15th, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something to look out for, by the way. And actually, just on a quick note here, Tyler Hall, U17s for the
Yeah.
U.S. men's U.S. youth national team. And then also Edison Escona was called to the first team for the Dominican Republic. So a couple of U.S. internationals there. Noah Allen has been a U20 player before for the U.S. men's. So really good stuff. I wanted to ask Phil Neville about that at some point, but I will later on. I want to know what he thinks the importance is. But lineups anyway. Backline. Do you agree or disagree with me about who do you think should play there?
Yeah, I think I don't want to be that person, but I don't know why Mabika. Yeah, I don't know why he's not starting. We saw that he's clearly good enough to play in MLS. I was about to say the MLS. I caught myself there, but he's clearly good enough to play in MLS. We saw it with those two games he got called up for. Um, Maybe it's a trust issue. I don't know. I personally think he's good enough. How are young players supposed to learn if you don't play them? Uh, but unfortunately, if Lowe's not able to go, not unfortunately, but if Lowe is not able to go, I think Breck will start because he just has that experience and trust, from Neville, and I think Shea does what Neville wants him to do. Um, I want to go back to your Gonzalo Higuain point and echo that sentiment that if you look at Higuain's advanced stats, he's not a very good presser. Like statistically, he's not a good presser, so for people calling him for him to line up in a as a number 10 in a 4-2-3-1, he's not he won't press. He's not that guy who's going to run down opposition attackers in that regard. So well, in theory, playing him as a 10 would do wonders for uh I guess Miami's passing and attack, once you get back on defense and try to play that disciplined 4-4-2 block of the mid block that you normally see teams do once they're in a defensive position. He's not going to run down players and press. So while that's a good idea, the reason why Miami hasn't played a 4-2-3-1 with Gonzalo as a 10, it's he's just not going to press or run down defenders. But going back to the defense, yeah, I think Shea will probably start if Lowe can't go. But I don't know. I've checked Damian Lowe's Instagram stories. He seems really positive. I don't know if that has to do with anything, but maybe he'll go just based off of that. But
Yeah, I noticed that too on Twitter too. He's getting pretty excited for the match, so it seems like there's some positive energy, and hopefully, I would like to send it all his way so he can play in this game because everyone knows how badly we need Damian Lowe in the defense. He's
yeah.
quite the rock back there. But now let's get into our discussion on the midfield here, and I think that this is going to be a weekly thing
Hmm.
because John Mota, Gregory, Mo Adams, is that going to be the three? And what would you, if there's something that you would rather see, let me know. But I don't know how many options Phil Neville really has because we just talked about the Gonzalo Higuain thing. Um, I'm not sure exactly what it is that he could do necessarily, but again, we're gonna have to see how that goes. That's probably why he's not playing a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-1-2 with two strikers because of the Gonzalo Higuain defensive thing. But do you see Gregory, Jean Montamo, Adams being that midfield three for the third week in a row?
Yeah, I think so. I've talked about how big of a George Acosta fan I am on the show, but I don't know. It's just, yeah, I would like to see George Acosta start, but especially with how offensively potent LAFC can be, I think bringing in Mo Adams, who has a really good tactical understanding of the game. Is a runner. He's physical. I think Neville will slot him in there. Excuse me, just for an extra bit of muscle. Of course, he's not the most creative player, and that midfield three can be of a bit of a dark hole of creativity sometimes. I know Mata can get it done occasionally, but I do feel as he's more of a box to box player. But yeah, in order to kind of stymie whatever LAFC is going to do, I think you bring in Mo Adams, a bit of a more physical, more muscle off the ball type of player. Of course, George Costa could start. If no one wants to go with the younger player, more creative player, but yeah, I think it'll be Mo Adams starting in midfield today, alongside
See,
Gregory and Mata.
yeah, it seems like Phil kind of values experience a lot, and you can see that with the Breck Shea start in the Austin match. And I think he said something about that when Noah Allen came off after 45 minutes. He said that he was just going to go to experience as they needed a couple of goals in that game. So I think that Phil Neville definitely values experience, and with Mo Adams, with Gregory, with Jean Mota, also saying this week that Jean Mota is the one of the best, if not the best, technical players on the team. He's probably asking of a lot of him to be that connector. So yeah, I would agree. I think it's the safest option to use those three. However, it's not my favorite option. However, I don't know how many options he really has. And I just want to see a little bit more from Mota going forward. He talked about how the six has to drop in, which would be Gregory, and dictate play in the press conference. And he needs to find the pockets of space in order to advance the ball. I want to see a little bit more of that from him. He obviously understands what's asked of him and John Mota. But if John Mota is the only one that's really trying to do any creating, it seems a little bit lopsided, and you'd lose a little bit of a dimension on the other side of the pitch. And that kind of forces to be a little bit of an issue. So looking for improvements in the midfield. It'll be a little tough against LAFC's midfield, who does happen to be pretty good, especially with Kellen Acosta there. He's quite the disruptor as well. So that'll be interesting. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Now, going forward, Higuain starts. But I ask you, Alex, is it Leonardo Campana or is it Ariel Lassiter? For me, personally, and I'm going to give my opinion on this, and it does not have to do with any Ecuadorian bias, but I'm going Leonardo Campana. One, he scored the goal. But even if he didn't score the goal last match, and I think if you remember correctly, I said Campana should still start in the Austin game, despite Lassiter being really good at the second half there in the Chicago match. Campana needs to be there. I think that with two things that I saw, big differences. We know this team, I'm going to say it again, has had problems in transitional offense. But even with that, Campana found himself in better areas in the first 45 minutes against Chicago than Ariel Lassiter did in the first 45 minutes against Austin. I think that Campana has the ability to get in good areas at good times with limited chances. As for Lassiter, if he's not receiving the ball over the top or all the way in front of him where he can chase it down in between spaces, which is not exactly what's going to happen, because I just don't think they're able to do that at this moment, then he doesn't have really anything to do on the field except trigger presses when LAFC would be on the ball. So for me, I'm going for Campana. I think that his hold up play is a little bit better as well, which might need to be a thing. I know that it's not something that I really like if you're going to sit back and counter and you're going to use hold up play to start advancing numbers up the field. But it seems like that's really their only route right now. But I'm hoping that it's Campana because I think that he can find himself in better areas with with less chances, with limited chances that we're probably going to see as LAFC look to shut down Miami. But what are your thoughts on that? Or I mean, what would you think about two, and then Higuain, and then another attacker? I'm not sure.
Personally, I do agree. I know I'm a big Ariel Lassiter fan.
And I
Honestly,
am too. I am too. I love Lassiter, but he needs time to get on the ball.
I don't know. I think I this is gonna be slightly controversial, but I think maybe maybe you can try this in a U.S. Open Cup game where the stakes aren't as high. Maybe try dropping Higuain and having Campana and Lassiter start up top. Higuain, like I've touched on this before, he's not a good presser. The only thing that not many things that he brings to the field is he's a really good passer and he has a really good vision, but he's getting up there in age and he's a bit slow and he's not a good presser. So, let's say you start Campana and Lassiter up top, you get two younger guys, like you said with Campana, he's got physicality, he can hold up the ball a bit well, he's really good at finding those spaces in the opposition penalty box. And Lassiter with his pace, give Miami a different look, a different option instead of having an Higuain drop deep and Lassiter get him behind. You got you got Campana who can find those spaces and Lassiter. Starting alongside him, it could look a bit different, and of course, you'd have to shift the midfield to put in a more creative midfielder, so you get that creativity in there somewhere. But Yeah, that's what I would do as far as what they're gonna do against LAFC. Um, I think Campana will end up starting. I like Campana a lot. I think I'm one of those people that think Miami should buy him after this loan is done and sort of build around him as that starting number 9. I think he's got a lot of good qualities, but um, yeah, it's just tricky. It's tricky, and I'm reading the comments here, and I saw someone mention Robbie Robinson. You know, he is also another option once he gets back from injury. So, yeah, honestly, the way Miami play right now, the 3-5-2, it's really, it's centered around Higuain. They're trying to get the best out of him, and I mentioned that in my 5 reasons article that that 3-5-2 it's mainly to disguise Gonzalo's weaknesses and try to amplify his passing ability. But like we saw in the first 2 games, it didn't really work out that well. So, if he switched to a flat back four, he's gonna have to press, he's gonna have to be a bit more mobile, and then, it doesn't necessarily work out that well all the time. So, yeah, I agree with your Campana point. I like Campana. He knows how to get into those pockets of space and find those. Of course, he needs to start finishing some of those, which he did against Austin, against Chicago, not so much. But if he starts later today, hopefully he can smash one or two in the back of the net, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. So,
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Lassiter only had one shot in that first half,
yeah.
and it was towards the end of the first half, and his back was to goal on like almost the corner of the 18-yard box, and he just turned and like kind of just passed it to the goalkeeper. So it didn't even really count as a shot in my opinion. But that just like goes to show you what his success rate for chances were. Um, in the first half there, and that's why I'm 100% for Campana. I think that it could get a little bit pricey, but I do agree that if they can keep him under as a U22 player for now, no, is he a TAM player or U22? I'm not sure. I think
I
he's
let me double check. I know Emerson is a U22
Emerson's
player.
U22.
I don't think
Campana,
Campana is.
I'm trying to think. I don't know how
Fact
old he
check.
is. Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm going to say he's exactly 22, so I wonder what that would do for
Hmm.
his contract for next year if they were to buy him, if they would not, if they'd lose that.
Yeah,
How
they
old
did
is he?
in the press release. He's 21.
Okay, so
They didn't
maybe it
say any.
works out.
Yeah, they didn't say anything about a U22
Okay,
player initiative like they did with Emerson. So yeah,
gotcha.
MLS roster roles are
It's
that's
yeah. Well,
another
listen,
show,
we'll get to
honestly.
that point when we
Yeah,
get there, right? We'll have to break that down later on next season if they're to buy
yeah,
him.
yeah,
Um, anyway, yeah, I'm on the Campana train. Like I
yeah.
said, it's not an Ecuadorian bias here, but I would really like to see Campana in this match.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, now that we've gotten that break broken down, I guess it's just time for predictions. Actually, before I do that though, I did want to make a point. Um, DeAndre Yedlin, and I know that he's been, I guess one of the more better consistent players. If this attack, and I'm gonna say this every week until I see some improvements, but if this attack cannot be built through the middle with all of those numbers there, Higuain, the three midfielders, Yedlin needs to show more on offense. And I think he needs to show what he showed in the Chicago match because he didn't show it against Austin. In the Chicago match, he almost won the penalty. He got down to the byline, probably should have had another penalty there, was making crosses, finding players in some good areas around the box, but he didn't do that against Austin. He kind of, made the
Hesitated a
offense.
little.
Yeah, he hesitated. That's a good
Yeah.
word. He hesitated when he got down near the area. And I think that I'm sure that that was expressed to him. I can't imagine it wasn't because for me, it was a little bit of an issue in the first half, especially. Yedlin, want to see some offensive improvements. And then defensively for Yedlin, I think that Mota and whoever plays on that right side need to have a little bit better understanding on how to cover for him when he does go up the pitch because I think
Yeah.
it will be a big ask for him. But
Oh, and
anyway,
that's where you I think you mentioned Mo Adams should switch over there because Mo Adams
switch
can
on
play
that
as a
side.
yeah, he can play as a right back too. So that switching switching back there would be a bit more natural for him being right footed, playing as a right
Right.
back, and Mata, he could switch over to the left. But
Right. I
yeah,
want to pull up Adrian's port here if you can. Alejandro on the back. Yeah, he goes up high, but no one's in the box when he gets up there on the wing. Granted, that's true. That was just true for the Austin match, and that's what I'm kind of talking about with Leonardo Campana. I think that Campana was more potent in that attack when Yedlin was getting up the field. Campana showed a little bit more in the box. Lassiter not as much. I'm not sure what exactly it was, but I think Campana has this number 9 natural instinct to find himself
yeah.
in good areas. So that's kind of just how I see that, and that's why I want Campana to start as well. Just a lot of things tie into it, and that's why I think he's he's the player to go for. And lastly, I think we can actually touch on this before we go to predictions. Is Robert Taylor? Can you?
Oof.
I know you love Robert Taylor. I love Robert Taylor
Yeah.
after what I saw in Austin. He had, I think he recorded more than half of Inter Miami shots, more than I think like 87% of them inside the box against the Austin match. Probably should have had a goal from a Higuain cross to the back post. He was the one that looked the most hungry to get a goal against Austin. Not me, Austin FC. For Robert Taylor, working on fitness is important. Phil Neville has expressed that he didn't have a full preseason. He barely had a preseason at that. He's tired when he comes on. His legs dying. He can hardly breathe, he said after the Chicago match. So it's a lot to get used to for him. But when this guy becomes a starter, because in my opinion, he's going to become a starter. Whew,
Hmm.
Robert Taylor. Speak to him, and hopefully we get to see a little bit. Hopefully, you get to see a little bit of him in this match, especially if they're down.
Yeah, and I want to touch on him a little bit. He's only played 70 minutes, and I'm looking at his stats right now. He has 7.17, excuse me, 7.71 shots per 90. So, and that's like the highest out of any Inter Miami player. Most Miami players have like 4 point something, 3 point something, but Robert Taylor has the highest shots per 90 despite only playing 70 minutes in the entire team. So, clearly he's a guy that he wants a goal. He clearly wants a goal. He's not afraid to take a shot. So, once he gets fully fit, he is definitely an automatic starter, in my opinion.
Yeah, we just have to be patient with him, right? I think that Phil Neville expressed that as well. Just have to do with patience, and hopefully, by some part in the dog days of summer, that he's ready to go and just go at teams, cut onto his right foot from the left side, reverse Iron Robin, I've been calling it, and hopefully
Yeah.
bag himself a couple of goals. But anyway, let's get into our predictions for this match. I'm just going to go first and make it very blunt and very clear that I don't think that Miami is going to win this match. Unfortunately, I do expect a loss. I'm going to say 3-1 in favor of LAFC. And I don't know if much really needs to be said on that given our whole pregame show. But Alex, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, personally, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to be positive, but LFC are a really good team, and Miami just didn't show enough for me against Austin and in moments against Chicago to make me think that they're going to overturn this. Of course, I could be wrong. But I think LFC is going to come down here, get their 3 points, go back to LA. I'll say 3-1. 3-1. I think Miami will get a goal, but LAFC, they're just, especially if Vela plays, I think it's going to be a little bit too much for them, especially if they don't get their tactics right. LAFC, a miscommunicating backline in Miami versus a really well-oiled front three for LAFC. It just smells like disaster, honestly. So I think it's going to be 3-1 LAFC.
Yeah, we're in agreement there. Adrian here says he's going to be the optimistic one. 2-1 Miami win. That would be massive. Steve here says 1-1 draw. I want to ask you about that. Are you happy with a point if you're Inter Miami against LAFC?
Mm, you know what? Yeah, sure. Stop the bleeding, and then you play FC Cincinnati, I believe, the week after this. So you
Right.
you get a draw at home. You go over Cincinnati.
And then you come
Miami
back
has
home to the
won all
Houston
their games there.
Dynamo.
Yeah, yeah. Oh wait, they play the Dynamo next? No.
No,
Yeah.
after Cincinnati. I'm saying you come
Yeah.
back home after Cincinnati to Houston Dynamo. Right.
True. Okay, so they play FC Cincinnati at their home, and then you get the Dynamo next at home, and that could be, you get a draw today. You play Cincinnati, get a win there, and then you come back home, get the win there, and then Miami is, they've got, good foundation to build off of. So you never know, but yeah, a draw would be good today too.
Yeah, I think a draw is a respectable point. It's a point that maybe Miami might be aiming for. But if they can get a goal early, which is something we talked about last week, getting a goal early, it seems like that's going to be a huge discussion this year because they've not been able to do that yet. One goal, and obviously the 180 plus minutes that they've had, haven't really threatened too much in either first half. So maybe a first half goal is the key here, and that's probably one of my keys from the match for Miami. But with that said, we're both predicting losses, unfortunately, but hopefully they can turn it around and figure things out and beat a really good LAFC side and make, have some confidence going into TQL Stadium and then back home against Houston the week after. And we will be covering all of those matches, including the rest of the season and this LAFC one for 5 Reasons Sports all year long. So make sure you tune into our pregame shows. Thanks so much for hanging out, Steve, Adrian, and William. I appreciate you guys. And we will see you guys for the post-game show or a post-game reaction, and then next week before the FC Cincinnati game. Alex, thank you so much for all your brilliant takes, as always, and we will see you guys next week.